Let's see how to do a oil change and also do a general service for your motorcycle at home. And the best part is I'm going to teach you everything step by step in this video. So let's get started. I'm going to start with an engine flush. Here I'm using Motool's engine flush, and to be clear, this is not a paid promotion. Flushing your engine is not mandatory. However, using this once every alternate service can keep your engine's internal surface clean, and if you're delayed on servicing, this can loosen up the sludge formation that is already built up on your engine. Using this particular one is very easy. We get 50 ml of engine flush in a bottle that has to be mixed with the old engine oil that is already there. Just open the engine oil filler cap and pour in the engine flush completely into the engine case. Once this is done, close the filler cap and let the motorcycle idle for at least 15 minutes. Make sure that you don't rev or even take your motorcycle for a ride. Let it idle for 15 minutes and later let the oil settle down. At this time your engine will be pretty hot and this is not the right time to work with it. So meanwhile, I'm going to remove the belly pan of Dominar, and this is held by 4 Allen bolts. 2 Allen bolts on the front end side and 1 each on both the sides. Once all the 4 bolts are removed, you can take out the belly pan out of the motorcycle. After letting your motorcycle cool for at least 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to use this 18mm socket to remove the drain bolt which is there on the left hand side of the engine. Avoid using open end spanners which can clip the drain bolt, which can create a lot of problems. Keep the drain bolt aside and let the oil drain completely. Once the oil flow has been reduced, using a plier, take out the strainer that is there inside the oil sump. We'll get back to this strainer in some time. Now on Dominar and on KTM motorcycles, we have an additional drain bolt located on the underside of the engine. This actually drains the oil which is there on the gearbox and the mid-chamber assembly. Using a 13mm socket or a ring spanner, loosen this drain bolt and let the oil drain completely. Make sure that you're working with a cold engine while you're removing this secondary drain bolt, as working with a hot engine can cause injuries. Once the secondary drain bolt is removed, let the oil drain completely into the collection pan. Once this is done, using a nose plier, take out the second oil strainer as shown. Be careful while you remove this strainer as it is very small and it can be damaged very easily. If you accidentally damage it, replace the strainer and don't reuse it. Now let's inspect the strainer to understand the engine condition. Looking at the primary strainer, there is a magnetic ring that collects lot of engine's metal particles that get circulated along with the oil while the engine is running. And looking at this condition, you can see lot of metal particles has been successfully collected here, which we need to clean. Whereas looking at the secondary strainer, you can see there is no magnetic ring. However, this has managed to collect some engine's metal particles which are bigger in size. This could be from engine casing, gearbox or any other metal parts. This was very important to be removed, cleaned and reinstalled, as recirculating this over and over again can actually increase the damage that is happening on your engine, and also this can also block the tiny channels that is created for passing the oil. Now let's remove all the metal chunks from both the strainers and clean this using WD-40 and restore its condition and also make it shine like a brand new one. Once both the strainers are cleaned, keep it aside for drying. Now at the same time, let's move on to removing the oil filter. Using an 8mm socket, crack open the 2 bolts holding the oil filter cap. Once this is done, start removing both the bolts completely. Using the rubber end of the ratchet, I'm tapping on the oil filter cap slightly to loosen this and then completely remove the oil filter cap from the motorcycle. After some oil is drained, I'm using a flathead screwdriver to tap into the old oil filter and remove it out of the motorcycle. You can see the condition of the old oil filter here, and we are going to replace this anyways. Now before that, let's remove the old oil seal which is there on the oil filter cap. Be careful if you're using a flathead screwdriver and make sure that you don't damage the surface which can cause oil leak. Once the old O-ring is removed, clean the oil filter cap using some WD-40 and microfiber cloth. Also, by this time, all the oils might have been drained from the oil filter chamber, so using a microfiber cloth, clean the internal surface of the oil filter chamber thoroughly. I have purchased 1 packet of O-rings from Bajaj, and I'm going to use one of this. Before you get into the installation, take some old oil and lubricate the O-ring to avoid any damages. Once the O-ring is thoroughly lubricated, install it on the oil filter cap that we have already cleaned. There is a tiny groove which is made. Make sure that the O-ring is seated properly into its groove. Next, this is the new oil filter that I purchased from Bajaj, and the good news is all KTM motorcycles, Bajaj Dominar, NS200, RS200 also use the same oil filter. Now before we get this oil filter installed onto the motorcycle, we need to pre-fill it to avoid the engine running dry at least during the initial crank. So I'm going to fill this oil filter with the fresh engine oil, and once it is completely filled, install the oil filter into the oil filter chamber. Next, press fit the oil filter cap and align the oil filter cap holes with the engine bolt holes. Hand tighten both the bolts completely and using the socket, tighten it in a crisscross pattern. Now the next step is to replace the air filter. But in order to get to the air box, we need to remove all the tank panels that is there on this Dominar. I have made several videos on showing how to remove the tank panels, so I'll not be showing you in detail in this video. I'm going to fast forward this process and we have finally reached the airbox. Now the airbox cover is held by 4 screws which we need to remove. There are 2 screws on the bottom side and 2 screws facing towards the front end side. Once all the 4 screws has been removed, you can take out the airbox cover and look at the air filter itself. And oh boy, you can see the condition of the air filter here. A clogged air filter can degrade your motorcycle performance, and this needs to be replaced and not reused. So I have bought a new air filter from Bajaj, and for your reference, this is a side-by-side comparison of the old air filter with respect to the new one. Even though the output side looks clean, the input side of the air filter seems to be pretty clogged in the old one. So anyways, we are going to replace this, so out with the old and in with the new. Installing this is pretty easy and is just opposite of removal. Place the air filter onto the slot which is already made and then install back the cover and tighten the 4 screws which you removed. Once this is done, install back the fuel tank and install all the tank panels back onto the motorcycle. Now the next step is to check the battery. Using a multimeter, check the battery voltage and it shouldn't be less than 12.3 volts. And thankfully, mine is around 13.6 volts. If your battery voltage is much lower than 12.3 volts, the issue might be on the rectifier or on the battery itself, which needs a replacement. Once you confirm your battery health is good, using a brush and a microfiber cloth, clean both the terminals thoroughly. If you find any corrosions, use a sandpaper to remove all the rust and corrosion to improve the contact. Now I'm going to use this TVS battery terminal protection spray, which you can directly purchase from any of the service center of TVS. Spray some terminal protection on the terminals as shown in the video. By spraying this will prevent any future corrosions that can happen. And also this ensures that the battery contacts are in a good health. One part which we often ignore to service is the locking mechanism of the pillion seat. Clean this area completely using a microfiber cloth, and not only the lock itself but also the nearby areas which might be having some grease. Once this is thoroughly cleaned, use some grease to re-lubricate this. Follow the same process on the pillion seat's lock pin too. Clean the pin from all the old grease and reapply with the fresh grease. Install back the pillion seat something like this. Now while you were doing all this service, your engine oil might have drained completely. Clean the drain area using a microfiber cloth and then let's install the strainer back into the chamber. You should hear a clicking sound confirming its proper installation. Once this is done, after cleaning the drain cap, re-lubricate the O-ring that is there on the cap itself. Once this is done, hand tighten the drain cap and tighten it secure using an 18mm socket. Repeat the same process for the secondary drain too. Install the strainer back, re-lubricate the O-ring and tighten the secondary drain bolt back onto the motorcycle. Secure it in place using a ring spanner. Now my Dominar had one more issue of oil leakage from the magneto cover. I have made a separate dedicated video for the same, for which I'll leave the link in the iCard above. Now let's open the oil filter cap. I am going to use this Motul 7100 10W50 grade engine oil for my Dominar. If you ask me this is the best oil, yes, this you can use and it is best than what Bajaj gives. However, there are better oils than this on which I'll be doing a dedicated video in future. I have purchased 2 cans of 1 liter each and I'm emptying 1 liter as shown. From the second bottle, I'm going to take 700 ml of engine oil in this measuring cup. And since my Dominar takes 1.7 liters in total, I'm going to use this 700 ml to fill in the rest. Once you have poured the engine oil completely, Clean the engine oil filler hole using a microfiber cloth. Install back the filler cap and secure it in place. Check if your oil level is between minimum and maximum range, and if it's there, then you have sufficient oil. Now the next step is to set your clutch and throttle free play. Again, I have made a dedicated video on this. I'll leave the link in the iCard above where you can go and watch. Once the adjustments are made, lock it in place. Next, let's have a look at the brake pads. I'm showing the rear brake pad here, and this is applicable for the front too. Using a flathead screwdriver, make some space, trying the piston to be pressed against the caliper. Once the space is made, take out the lock pin and remove the slider pin out. Once this is done, you can remove both the brake pads out of the bike. You can see the condition of the brake pad here, which is very shiny and polished. I'm going to use a sandpaper to sand it down to create an uneven surface. Now, if your brake pad is worn out, consider replacing it on time. Once this is done, install back the brake pad onto the caliper and install its pin and lock it with the lock pins. Repeat the same process for the front caliper too. The next step is to clean and lubricate your chain. I'm going to use this C1 chain cleaner from Motul, and if you notice something, I'm not only spraying this on the chain and the sprocket itself, but also the nearby area where there's lot of sludge and grime buildup. Using a screwdriver, scoop out all the sludge buildup that is there on the front sprocket area, and using a dedicated brush, clean and agitate all the dirt and grime that is there on the sprocket. Use sufficient amount of C1 chain cleaner to clean the sludge. I have made a dedicated video on how to clean your chain. You can follow along in that in a detailed way. I'll leave the link for which in the iCard above. After cleaning the chain, let's give the bike for a water wash. Now while they do a water wash, make sure that the chain is also washed along with it. Now the next step is to adjust the chain slack. Using an appropriate number socket for your bike, I'm going to remove the axle bolt as shown. You need not completely remove it, you can just loosen it and that's more than enough. Now for this type of chain adjuster, there's a lock nut and the adjuster nut. Holding the adjuster nut in place, loosen the lock nut. Repeat the same process on the other side too. Once both the lock nuts are loosened, rotate the adjuster nut in the anti-clockwise direction to reduce the slack. One important thing to note here is the marking on the swing arm and the axle nut has to match. So make sure both the sides is equally matched, and in this way you can align the wheel. Once all the adjustments are made, tighten back the axle nut, only then hold the adjuster nut and lock the lock nut. And do the exact same process on both the sides. Once the necessary adjustments are made, I'm going to use C2 lube from Motul to lubricate the chain. And this is how the chain looks without any lubrication. And this is how it looks once it is sufficiently lubed. Now it's time for making your motorcycle stand out. I'm going to use this car 1-on-1 tire and trim restorer to get the depth and deep blacks on my plastic panels. Applying is pretty easy, just spray it down and buff it with a microfiber cloth. I'll fast forward this process, and I have already made a dedicated video for this product too, and I'll leave the link for which in the iCard above. Once this is done, using some WD-40, lubricate all moving points like your foot pegs, control switches, your lock sets, both on the tank and as well as the ignition. Also, don't forget to lubricate your clutch yoke. Once all this is done, your general service is successfully completed. Let's see the final results. Now we have some icing on the cake. Once we have enough petrol, at least 3 to 5 liters, I'm going to use this Motul's petrol system cleaner, which I can directly pour into my fuel tank, so which all the fuel lines and the injectors get cleaned internally. I'll do this off camera and your motorcycle performs like a brand new one. I hope this video was informative enough, and if you people like this video, do consider subscribing to Archeonics and follow me on Instagram for more such interesting content.